This episode of The Construction Record is brought to you by the Greater Toronto Sewer and Water Main Contractors Association. Clean water, our goal, our future.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 74 of the Construction Record podcast. This is Vince Versace, National Managing Editor of the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce, joining you today. This podcast is supported by ConExpo ConAg. Check out North America's largest construction show, which will hit the stage in Las Vegas March 10th to the 14th this year. With over 2,000 exhibitors, there's much to see and do during the show. Save 40% on show admission when you register by January 17th. That deadline's fast approaching, folks, so jump on it. For more information, visit conexpoconag.com on the web to find further show information and to register. We also have another note from one of our sponsors, and that is the Ontario Sewer Water Main Contractors Association. The OSWCA would like you to know that their 2020 OSWCA conference will be taking place February 9th to the 12th. Conference registration is now open. There are still sponsorship opportunities also available. And also they wanted you to note that new for 2020 are two education seminar streams. One stream is called the Management Stream and the other one is an Owner's Stream. There will be plenty of networking opportunities at the conference and team building events. For more information on the OSWCA conference, visit oswcaconference.com on the web and you'll find all the details you need. For this episode of the Construction Record, I'm only going to talk about one story, one topic, before I throw to Russ and Warren in the Burnaby office. And it's an unfortunate incident, an unfortunate story for us to talk about. Sad, monumentally, as you start to look at more of the details. And it did touch the Canadian construction industry, though it was an international event. I'm talking about on Wednesday, January 8th of this week. Ukrainian Airlines Flight PS-752 was shot down just shortly after takeoff in Tehran, Iran. We've learned subsequently, since the airplane was downed, that there were 176 people on board. Of those 176 people on board, 63 of them were Canadians. This is a huge hit to the Canadian-Iranian community. Why am I talking about it here in a construction podcast? Simply put, as the names and the stories started to come out since Wednesday, it's only been a couple of days, we start to see that the construction community was impacted by this and touched by this. At last count, from what we've been looking at, from the information we've researched, we see that there are at least 6 members of the Canadian construction community, whether they were engineers, architects, or involved in construction, were lost on that flight. There were also a couple of engineering students that were lost on the flight as well. Our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, as those of you know, or in case you missed it, yesterday he made an announcement and spoke to the nation, and it sounds like intelligence reports, both Canadian and other international intelligence reports, indicate that the passenger plane was likely shot down by accident by an Iranian missile. Those of you that are aware of the events of the night of January 8th, that night the Iranian government decided to launch a ballistic missile attack on a base in Iraq that housed both American soldiers and Iraqi soldiers and other international soldiers. And that was in response to the American drone killing of the Iranian top general. I hesitate, and I look to find words not to add drama to this podcast conversation. But what strikes me is, as we start to learn the little tidbits of the people that were lost on this flight, is what strikes me is the confluence of different factors that have to come into play to be, unfortunately, in that spot at that time, to be on that plane which takes off at that time in Iran. And to have so many people just lose their lives like that, it's hard. It's hard to fathom, especially when you think of the families and the children that were on that flight. But to kind of give put a bit more of a face to this and why we're covering it, Russell Hixson really put his nose to the grindstone to generate a piece, and we used the Canadian press as well to help fill in some story blanks for us. We were able to learn that there was a Winnipeg couple on that flight, Madi Sadigay and Bahare Hashasafarandiai. They were civil engineers at Fresh Products Design Builders and Marwest Construction in Manitoba. They were traveling with their daughter, Anissa Sadigay. The Winnipeg Construction Association issued a statement after learning of their passing. We're deeply saddened to learn that two of the passengers on flight PS 752 were employees with our member companies, said representatives of the Winnipeg Construction Association. Our thoughts are with the staff at both firms, as well as friends and family of Sadigay and Hashasafarandiai, and everyone else affected by Wednesday morning's tragedy in Iran. Marwest Construction expresses condolences on social media. We lost someone today in the PS 752 crash in Iran, and it truly hurts. Bahare was a vital team member on 300 Main. She moved us all with her kindness, intelligence, and resilience. We will miss you. May you and your family rest in peace. The Canadian press also reported that Montreal's École de Technologie Supérieure confirmed that a married couple, Arvin Moratab and Aida Farzaneh, were among the dead. Both had studied for their PhDs at the school, and Farzaneh was actually lecturing in construction engineering at ETS. All of the ETS community offers its most sincere condolences to the families and loved ones, as well to their teachers and colleagues, the school wrote in a statement. Another person that passed that is involved in construction, but via the architecture arm, was Maide Gassemi. She's an architect from a firm in Richmond Hill here in Ontario. The firm is called N Architecture. She was on the flight with her two children, an 11-year-old Arsam Niazi and 8-year-old Arnika Niazi. Nitin Malhotra, the principal architect of the firm, reported it in a full credit. We didn't get this. We got this via Global News. They're the ones that hunted this information and reaction down. They spoke to Nitin Malhotra. He's the principal architect at the firm. He said that they were devastated by Maide's passing. And this is what he had to say. She was very driven, very committed, very bright. Just a nice, warm individual. She's someone that I could trust, rely on, put her in front of my clients, as well as rely on her when she was away from my office, that she could manage my staff. He spoke glowingly about her, about his colleague that he lost in this tragedy on Wednesday in Iran. There's other folks, there's other stories. For us Canadians, it's a blow. You know what I mean? Whether these are newly found Canadians of Iranian descent or Canadians that were born here, it really doesn't matter. If they're considered Canadians, they're part of our community, part of our 35 million strong in this country. And we lost quite a few people that night. And the construction community, as other communities and industries, were also impacted by this. And we just thought we would share in our grief, in our condolences, on behalf of the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce news teams. Our prayers are with all the family and friends of everyone that was that's related to the people that were on that flight. With that, I would also like to apologize as far as the numbers, the names I may have mispronounced. I tried my best. If you want to find more information, please go to our website. We do have a story about how the construction industry was impacted by this tragedy, but as well, any local or national media can give you all the information you need to know on this tragedy. And with that, I throw to Russ and Warren at the JOC office. Once again, our thoughts with all the friends and family of those that were lost on flight PS 752. God bless and thank you.
This episode of the Construction Record is brought to you by the Ontario Sewer and Water Main Construction Association. Clean water is everybody's business.
All right, thanks, Vince. It's me, Warren Frey, digital media editor for the Journal of Commerce.
I am staff writer for the Journal of Commerce, Russell Hixson.
And I've had a couple weeks off, but Russell's been busy like a bee, so busy.
Buzz, buzz.
Buzz, buzz. So tell me what you're up to, Russ.
Well, I did a story on Saanich, BC, on the island. This is an interesting story about development cost charges. And what they've done is the Saanich has decided after 20 years to really ramp up their DCCs. Mm-hmm. And some of the builders and the construction community on the island is they're not so much upset that the costs are going up. I mean, obviously they'd like to see them not go up.
Yeah.
But they're just they don't feel like the amount is fair, and it's triple digits. I mean, it depends on what kind of project you're having done. But I talked to Casey Edge with the Victoria Residential Builders Association, and he says most builders will see at least 180% increase in their DCCs. And in documents I got from City Council, there's a builder that says their cost for one specific project is going up 390%, their DCC charges.
Why this, I'm assuming Victoria is a set of cities together, just like Vancouver is. So Saanich is its own city council?
No, this is just in Saanich.
Okay, yeah. But why specifically Saanich compared to anywhere else?
What do you mean? Why are their costs going up so much?
Yeah, why are the costs there
so high? They're saying that this is to fund infrastructure that will support more housing, gotcha. Right? And they point to they claim that it's comparable to other cities, which is somewhat true and somewhat not true. Mm-hmm. So you have a city like Langford, which does have comparably high DCCs,
right?
But from my sources in some of the builders on the island, they say they don't have a problem with Langford necessarily having high DCC charges because their approval process is so much more efficient,
right,
that you don't have the same uncertainty that you have in Saanich.
Okay.
So Saanich, not only, I think they're frustrated because they're getting hit on multiple fronts. It's like not only are they going to have much higher DCCs, you also have to wait 2 years to get your project approved if it's going to be approved.
Do you have to pay up front, or how does that work?
You get the DCCs when you get your building permit.
Gotcha.
So
then you have to wait.
So I think a lot of people are frustrated, right, because they've already factored in all the costs for their project, and as soon as it gets approved, there's going to be all these new charges, these new things that they haven't budgeted for that are going to mess things up. And
they're kind of caught in limbo, basically.
Yeah, so there's one builder right now who already has a massive, more than 500 unit project in the pipeline. They're called West Build, and it's their University Heights project in Saanich. And it's right now it's kind of in the process, and while it was in the process, they made this huge change. They're going to do this huge change, and West Build is claiming that this could totally derail the project, that it might be over, which kind of totally is a counterpoint to the city council, which is claiming that this is going to help generate more housing and help facilitate more housing.
Building any, how can you?
But it's putting, the builder claims it's putting this project in jeopardy, which is more than 500 perpetual rental units. So it's not like this is a project of extremely high luxury condos and things and units for people that it's going to be a few and it's not going to be affordable. This builder has gone out of its way to make a rental specific and some of them below market rentals, and it might derail that project. So it seems very counterintuitive. So they're very frustrated. And then even the United Association of Canada, which represents some trade workers, they're upset because obviously it could jeopardize work.
Exactly, yeah.
So, and then not only that, but the city has also decided to fast track government funded affordable housing projects. So these private builders
who are also doing the same thing, yeah.
Who are also doing similar things feel like that they're going to be put on the back burner, and their market housing is going to take even longer. So not only are average wait times in Saanich years, not months, they're years, not only is it that, but there are also those projects that aren't government funded housing projects, affordable housing projects. Those are going to be back of the line. So it's going to take even longer.
Okay.
So they're just getting hit on multiple fronts, and
Right.
they're frustrated. So they've written to the Minister of Housing. They're writing letters to just even postpone this, or lengthen out the ramping up process to give them more time, or even just grandfather in projects that are already in development who haven't planned for this increase.
Okay. And what else you got?
Yeah, we have another thing that kind of blew up a little bit. The United Nations has condemned several Canadian projects, and it's not the UN, it's a specific UN committee, and it looks like a lot of people in the industry and at the province of, well, at least in Alberta, aren't taking it lying down.
NBC, for that matter.
Yeah, NBC. So they this committee, they're called the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. And there are 18 independent experts that comment on various things going around the world. And so they have said, they've recommended to stop work on Site C Dam, the Coastal GasLink pipeline, and the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion. So they say these three projects, you should stop work on them because they've moved forward without, and I quote, the free, prior, and informed consent of impacted Indigenous groups, end quote. So that's what they said. And this really incensed, I think, some people in the industry, especially the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association, the ICBA here in BC. They've long been really strong proponents of Trans Mountain and Site C specifically. And they were quick to point out that a lot of Indigenous groups have actually embraced these projects and support them and are benefiting greatly from them. And so they felt like it wasn't fair to just claim that all Indigenous groups are thinking one way, because that's just not true. I spoke with Jordan Bateman with the ICBA. He's the VP of Communications and Marketing, and he called it ham-fisted and embarrassing. He was not happy about it. He said it kind of waters down everything else that committee does with a kind of unserious statement that they've done when there's so many other serious things. And he also called it very hypocritical, because there's people who are signatories to that committee, who are represented on that committee, like China and Russia, who have
human rights problems, let's say.
Who are embroiled right now in extremely serious human rights things right now.
The Uyghur sequestration of the Uyghur population, for one.
I mean, that's extremely troubling happening in China with the Uyghur. A lot of really serious allegations with their treatment of people there. That was some comment. And even the Alberta Energy Minister, Sonia Savage, came out with scathing comments about it as well. She said, Canada's duly elected representatives, not unaccountable international committees, are responsible for the governing decisions in this country. That's what she said.
One thing people don't realize sometimes when these things come up is that the UN can just recommend things. They can't actually do anything with it unless you've got a peacekeeping force.
Well, that's correct, but I mean, the UN carries a lot of weight and legitimacy.
That's, optics-wise, yes, that's true.
And so when the UN condemns something, or when the UN recommends something, there's a perceived legitimacy to that. And I think a lot of people here in our industry feel like our projects, whether you support them or not, have moved through the process, legitimate processes. And you're never going to get 100% of people supporting.
Well, and that stuff's also going to the court. Like, there are six, a number of First Nations who are taking this project to court, which is the way it's supposed to work, right? So,
that's true. I mean, especially right now, the Coastal GasLink pipeline, it's popping off. There's a protest camp.
These things are happening.
It's happening right now.
So it's not like, it's not quite as perceived by this report, I guess.
Yeah, I think the implication that the UN is putting Canada's energy projects kind of on the same docket of issues as, horrific acts of racially motivated violence is, I think, incensing some people in our industry. because that's what that committee deals with, right?
Yeah.
And so to put that in the same docket as those things, I think really bothered a lot of people. In
Now, having
government.
said that, protesters may very well have some legitimate
Of course.
concerns too, right?
Of course,
So, yeah.
right. So I mean, that's what I was working on these
Okay,
past few days.
I was off in lovely Portland, Oregon, but I'm back
Right.
now, and I did go to the Bentall Memorial for the 39th anniversary of the accident that happened there on January 7th,
Right.
and I've put together an audio documentary, which you will hear right now. On January 7th, 1981, 4 men fell to their deaths from the then under construction Bentall 4 Tower in downtown Vancouver. Every year on that date, construction workers, government and labor representatives, and friends and family gather at the Bentall Memorial near the Burrard Street SkyTrain station to pay tribute to the victims of the accident and speak about the importance of workplace safety. This year, BC Building Trades President Andrew Mercier hosted the ceremony.
We're here because 39 years ago, on January 7th, 1981, 4 carpenters plunged to their deaths when the fly form they were working on the 36th story of Bentall 4 gave way. These men, Gunther Couvreau, Euro Matrunin, Brian Stevenson, and Donald Davis, went to work that day and they didn't return.
I think it's important here to remember that when we have this ceremony, it's not about the Trades Council, it's not about the unions, it's about the workers who have lost their lives in the construction industry and the 4 who died at the Bentall ceremony. So what we try to do is create a space here to commemorate that and to focus on safety issues and to bring forward a space for the families to come and remember their loved ones.
This tragedy shone a light on the safety practices in one of the most dangerous industries in British Columbia. The coroner's inquiry that followed this senseless tragedy faulted those involved with the manufacture and the assembly of the fly forms, as well as the lack of worksite inspections by WCB. Following that coroner's inquiry was a second inquiry by the provincial government into the safety standards in the construction industry in this province. And out of that inquiry came a series of recommendations for regulatory change to change the regulations surrounding fly forms. Those regulations were implemented, and there has not been a single death involving fly forms since that day. However, the construction industry in British Columbia is still one of the most dangerous industries to work in this province. Since Bentall, over 1,000 construction workers have died in workplace-related deaths. Last year, in 2019, 1 out of 5 work-related deaths was a construction worker, despite the fact that less than 10% of the workforce in this province work in construction.
At the federal level right now, there needs to be a national strategy for asbestos, and so we're calling on the federal government and federal MPs to support a national strategy for asbestos, which includes a patient registry of those with mesothelioma. There's progress, and there's been progress on the provincial front in terms of addressing the asbestos issue. You know, progress on safety matters is never as fast as you want it to be, and so we need to take the time to commend those who have fought for it and dealt with the bureaucracy to implement it. But it's not where it needs to be, and we're going to keep pushing until it gets there.
Vancouver Mount Pleasant NDP MP Jenny Kwan spoke at the event and stressed the importance of federal action regarding asbestos.
We need a national standard, as it was mentioned. The issue of asbestos is actually brought up in the House before. We've debated this issue, and yet there's no action to follow up. So often what we do see with the Liberal government and with the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is that there's a lot of talk, but there's no follow-through. There's no action to follow through with the talk. And so from our perspective, what we want to see for 2020 is enough talk already. We heard today the continuous death that's occurred in the community for workers, and behind every single worker, those statistics are real people. You know, it's somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's spouse, somebody's father perhaps. And any time when you have injuries or death that's preventable is one too many. And so I want to make 2020 as a year of action as opposed to a year of talk. We are hopeful that the government would understand that they're in a minority government situation, and that there would be effort to work collaboratively with other parties. On the issue around workplace safety, on the issue around asbestos, as mentioned, in my first term in the House of Commons, this was debated in the House of Commons. Everybody spoke in favor of action that needs to be taken, but yet since then, no action's been taken. And so we will, of course, do everything we can to advance the issues, and we hope that the government will, in fact, take a collaborative approach to it.
Diane Stevenson, the sister-in-law of fallen Bentall worker Brian John Stevenson, has spoken before at the memorial, but this year she brought an old thermos used by her brother-in-law as a memento to his memory. She spoke to us about looking back at the accident after almost 40 years.
It's unbelievable. It's hard to imagine that it's been 40 years when that vibrant life is still so much alive in your memory, and it's just like, and then yet you think all of those milestones that we've had that he hasn't been a part of. That's what's been so hard. It was very, very difficult on Mom, on his mother. She just passed away 5 years ago, but we got her down here, wheelchair and everything, because it meant a lot to her that people remembered and people were trying to improve things. So, yeah, it's very devastating for a family when it's that unexpected. You think, I can just remember the phone call and when we were heading down over to Mom's, and it's just like, and I would say to Bruce, maybe they've made a mistake. And he's like, always the pragmatic one and going, they don't make mistakes on things like this. And you're going, but maybe. And she just don't want to believe it's happened.
Diane also gave words of advice from her own experience to those looking to enter the trades.
It's one of those things that you would never say. I mean, it's a trade that they love. That's why they're there. I would never discourage anybody. All I have to say is that you have to be looking out for number one, but you also have to be looking out for your co-workers. It's not any one person's responsibility, it's everyone's responsibility. And that's, I would say, you follow your heart, but be real careful. The thermos is one big ugly metal thermos from the 1970s, and it was one that Brian John toted with him all the time. And obviously was tough to carry because it is so big. When it's full, it's very heavy. So he jury-rigged a handle for it, and that was one of the things when we were given things after the accident that we, chose to hang on to. We only have, because there were other family members, and of course he was engaged. He didn't live at home, so it's his spirit of, okay, you've got coffee, you're set to go, whether it's on an adventure on the boat, whether it's camping, all those things, because he was somebody who lived life to the extreme. So at least we have a little bit of that with him when we've got his thermos in tow.
Everyone who leaves for work in the morning deserves and has the right to come home in the afternoon. It shouldn't take a tragedy like this to make our workplace safer.